Hello, everybody. My name is Tyler Russo, and this is the KO Podcast, episode number 11. In this episode, I will be reviewing UFCSanDiego, Bellator 284, PFLPlayoffs, and later on in this episode, I will be reviewing UFC 278 PFLPlayoffs. That is the final playoff card for PFL and Dana White's Contender Series. Ring that bell. Alright, starting off the show with UFCSanDiego. The night began with a majority draw. It was a really close fight. So, the refs, I think, gave some 10-8s out to make it a majority draw. So that was a little bit weird on the cards. Luckily, it didn't really affect the other fights. Sometimes when the first fight ends weirdly, it kind of sets the precedent to the rest of the card. But it did not, luckily. We move on to a catchweight bout with Jason Witt and Josh Quinlan. And Quinlan knocked out Witt cold. A very, very brutal knockout. So he now moves to 6-0. We move on to the flyweight division. We had Odi Osborne taking on Tyson Nam, and Tyson Nam gets the huge stoppage victory. Osborne came in with a flying knee, and Nam just gut him right on the chin with a hook. That sat him down, and Nam went for the finish. We move on to the lightweight division. We had Gabriel Benavidez taking on Charlie Tavares. And Benavidez, usually he fights in the featherweight division, but he moved up to the lightweight division. And, hey, he looked really good. So I'll be keeping an eye out if he stays in this lightweight division. Moving on, we had a women's flyweight bout. We had Cynthia Calvillo taking on Nina Nunes. And Nina Nunes gets the split division victory. She puts her gloves in the center of the octagon, and she retires from MMA. Her reasoning was a good reasoning. She wants to have more children, and her and Amanda have such a beautiful family already with their daughter. So, it's going to be a beautiful thing to see them have more children and just continue their beautiful family. So, Nina Nunes, congratulations on a great mixed martial arts career. We move on to another catchweight bout. We had Angela Hill taking on Lupi Godinez, and Angela Hill gets the unanimous decision victory. Great performance by Hill, and she comes out on the right end of a decision. We move on to the main card. We had a middleweight bout. Bruno Silva taking on Gerald Meerschaert, and Meerschaert gets it done in the third round. It was an entertaining fight, and Meerschaert dropped Silva. He hurt him a couple times, and he dropped him, and he went to the guillotine submission, and he gets it done. So very impressive win for Gerald Meerschaert. We move on to a light heavyweight bout. We had Devin Clark taking on Azmat Murzakanov, and Murzakanov gets the stoppage win. I believe he is from the Contender Series, so keep an eye out for him as he moves on in this light heavyweight division. Moving on to the women's strawweight bout, we had Yasmin Juringo taking on Lasmin Locondo. Both of these women are great prospects for this strawweight division. Yasmin Jarangi gets the decision victory. She moves to 9-0. But again, I said, both of these women, they're both young and they're both super talented. So, even though Locondo did not get the victory, I still believe that she's got a bright future in the UFC. Moving on to the featherweight co-main event. Man, this fight was insane. We had Nate Landwehr taking on David Onama, and Nate Landwehr gets the decision victory. It was a crazy, crazy fight. Man, Nate Landwehr is an entertainer. It was a war. I don't know how David Onama got out of that second round. I thought he was finished, but hey, he dug deep and he stayed in the fight. So props to both men. I'm putting on, a great fight of the night performance for both of them. They both deserve that bonus money. Moving on to the co-main event, we had Marlon Chito Vera taking on Dominick Cruz. And Cruz, look, Dominick Cruz looked so good in this fight. I had him up 3-0 going into the fourth round on Chito. And, he did get dropped a bunch of times, but he recovered so well that, it kind of, in my eyes at least, it kind of took away from those takedowns. But as I said last week, Marlon Vera has those weapons to end a fight, very quickly. And, Dom, he dips his head when he moves with his movement, and Vera just gut him with a nasty kick, and it sent him flying to the canvas. And 3 punches later, he is the victor in this bantamweight fight. It was a brutal kick. I've retweeted a bunch of pictures of it. The sound was it was just insane, and it's such a big dent right in Dominick Cruz's nose. So it landed flush. Marlon Vera, obviously he has options now. So he's probably gonna wait. And if Yan beats O'Malley, who knows? He could face Peter Yan. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens in this bantamweight title picture. Now, Dominick Cruz, he was number 8 coming into this fight. He's probably going to drop out of that top 10. What else does he really have to do in this sport? It's up to him. Is he going to step away? Is he going to keep fighting? So it's going to be interesting to see what Dominick Cruz does. Obviously, he's probably going to take some time away to think about things. So, I hope to see him back in the announcer booth because, I enjoy him personally as an announcer on the UFC broadcast. And that is going to do it for the UFC San Diego coverage. And now we're going to move on to Bellator. All right, we had Bellator 284 Friday night. Let's get into some of these fights that I want to highlight. We had Pat Downey picking up his first ever professional mixed martial arts win. It was a very, very quick submission. 36 seconds into the first round, he just took his guy down, no problem, submitted him right away. So a good start to Pat Downey's MMA career. We move on to a women's flyweight fight. We had Deanna Bennett taking on Justine Kish, and Deanna Bennett gets the victory. A little weird with the matchmaking here. She had her last fight was also against Justine Kish, and she also beat her by decision. Justine Kish did have a fight in between her fighting Bennett for the second time. Kish did win against Limale McFarlane, but Deanna Bennett gets the better of her again. Moving on to a bantamweight fight, we had Josh Hill taking on Marcos Breno, and Breno wins by decision. Man, Breno looked so impressive. He's 15-2 now, so this is a guy that is just now inserted right into this Bellator bantamweight division. So Breno, keep an eye out for him because Josh Hill, man, he's a game fighter, and he's a very good fighter, and Brando just went in there and got the job done very impressively. We move on to the main card. We had Austin Vanderford taking on Aaron Jeffrey. Aaron Jeffrey took this fight on, I believe, like 5 or 6 days' notice. So big props to him, and big props to Vanderford for taking that fight because he did not have to. And, this fight, very entertaining, but man, I did not expect it to go down like that. Aaron Jeffrey, he dropped Vanderford like 2 times, and in a minute 25 in the first round, he gets the stoppage victory. Man, Aaron Jeffrey, he looked sharp. His striking looked on point. And, he had when he was in there with Vanderford, I could tell he just had a big size advantage. So Jeffrey's 6'2", and Vanderford was 5'10", but Jeffrey looked a lot bigger. So he's a big middleweight. So now he injects himself into this top into this top 10 of the middleweight division. And I did ask him some questions after the fight, and this is what he had to say.
Yeah, man, it was short. I was just saying to my coaches, I kind of wanted to see if I could hang with him in the wrestling and if I could break him, but I guess this is good too. For sure, yeah. Like I said, I would have liked, wouldn't have liked to. It's good how it ended, but I wanted to see if I could wrestle with him. I think I can. I wanted to show some people I can wrestle too, but yeah, this is a nice way to end it.
All right, and we move on to the next fight. We had a heavyweight fight. We had Saeed Somoa taking on Gacek Sirkankum, I think that's how you say it. And Sirkankum had the decision victory. We move on to a women's flyweight fight. We had Lima Lay McFarland taking on Bruno Ella, and Lima Lay McFarland got the victory over Ella. She really needed this victory. She was on a 2-fight losing streak, and she hadn't really been as active as she wanted to. She cited a lot of that with the injuries that she had. She missed weight on this fight, so I just think the injuries have been plaguing her a lot. So I did speak to her after her decision victory, and this is what she said.
I think with the knee, I definitely have to rehab it really, really good. I really have to take this time off to focus on the strengthening aspect of it. It's very unstable because of the ACL, and it's an old ass ACL. It's like 17 years old, and so yeah, I have to rehab, strengthen, and again, just kind of go from there. Be smart about my training. And be smart about keeping the weight off too. A lot of trouble, if I get big in the off season, then I have to work twice as hard to get the weight off. And that means more running, more impact on the knee. And so I think I just overall have to be smarter about my training and physical therapy. I have the best physical therapist in the world. Shout out to ES3PT, Dr. C and Renee, them and Heather, them. They're the best team in the world for my physical therapy. So that's what I'll do starting Monday.
All right, moving on to the heavyweight co-main event. We had Valentin Moldavsky taking on Steve Mowry. Unfortunately, this fight ended before it really got going. It was under a minute in the first round, and Moldavsky accidentally eye pokes Mowry, and the fight cannot continue on because Mowry, I guess he couldn't see. So, obviously a very disappointing end to that fight. Will they rebook that fight? Who knows? And now moving on to the welterweight main event, we had Neiman Gracie taking on Gotachi Yamakachi, and yeah, what a fight. This was a very entertaining fight. Yamakachi gets the KO finish on Gracie. A vicious uppercut just turned Gracie, limp, and he just went down hard, and man, what an uppercut. I think that's only his third TKO KO win in his career. Most of his win, Yamakachi, are by submission. So he really opened up a lot of eyes to his striking game. He looked good on the feet. He was blocking Gracie's punches with his forehead, with his hands down, moving forward. I love that. This guy's just a gamer, man. He's, I'm excited for this welterweight division because I think he's a great piece to add. So he's going to make things very interesting. And that was Bellator 284. Now we move on to the PFL playoffs. All right, let's get into this PFL playoffs. We had a welterweight semifinal between Sabu Sai and Carlos Leal. I think that's how you say his name. And so, Sai gets the third round submission, so he moves on to that welterweight championship fight. He gets the chance to fight for $1 million. So congratulations to Sai. And then we had a heavyweight semifinal. We had Scheffel versus Adams. Adams did come in on short notice, so props to him. But in the end, Scheffel gets the victory, and there was a brutal picture that I retweeted Adams taking a vicious shot. It was a brutal shot that he took. And moving on, we had a heavyweight semifinal. We had Ante Delechai taking on Ferreira. And this was a interesting matchup. You have Ante Delgetta. He was 3-0 this season. He's made the playoffs or the championship like every season that he's been in the PFL. He is part of Krokop's camp in Croatia, so and he's got that great experience in the corner. And he finishes Rayan Ferreira in the first round. So very impressive win by him. He moves on to that heavyweight semifinal. If I'm thinking right, he was in the heavyweight final last year against Bruno Capoloza, I believe. So this guy he's been in this position, but he hasn't won yet. So let's see if he can pull off that victory. That would be a big victory for him. Moving on to the welterweight semifinal, we had Rory McDonald taking on Diallo Taylor. And again, Taylor came in on short notice, and wow, just impressive. TKO's Rory McDonald in impressive fashion. He moves on to the welterweight championship fight. So, it's going to be interesting because Taylor, he's come in on short notice a couple times this season. So, obviously, he's always ready to fight. And on the flip side, Rory McDonald, after this loss, he did retire from mixed martial artists. So, just a legend of the sport, especially in Canada. He had that legendary fight, him and Lawler, their second fight. For the welterweight championship. That's a legendary fight. That fight should go in the UFC Hall of Fame at some point. So congrats to Rory McDonald, on an amazing career. He was able to become champion in Bellator for a time. So just, all the best to Rory McIlroy. And now we're going to move on to reviewing UFC 278. All right, let's get started with this card. In the early prelims, a fighter I want to point out is AJ Fletcher. He was on the Contender Series. I believe he did lose his UFC debut he lost it to Matthew Semsberger. So AJ Fletcher is looking for his first UFC win. We move on to the prelims. We have some familiar names. We got Sean Woodson, Luis Saldaya. That should be a fun fight. We also have Leandro Santos taking on Jared Gordon. That should be a fun fight. Jared Gordon is always a fun fighter to watch. We move on to the main card. Starting off this main card, we have a light heavyweight bout. Tyson Pedro taking on Harry Hunsucker. This fight's interesting. I don't know a lot about... I think I've seen Harry Hunsucker fight. I'm just a little surprised that he's on the main card. Tyson Pedro, his last victory was against Ike Villanueva. So, I don't know. I think they could have put a better fight for the first card, for the first fight on this card. But nonetheless, moving on to a heavyweight matchup, we have Marcin Tybura taking on Alexander Romanov. And Alexander Romanov, he's 16-0. He's dominated everybody he's fought. So obviously a surging heavyweight prospect. He can get in the top 10 with this victory, I believe. Moving on to a bantamweight matchup, we have the legend Jose Aldo taking on Marab Dulishov. I think that's how you say it. But Jose Aldo, always a fun watch. I always, watch his fights when they're on. I mean, he's just to still be doing what he does, at I think 35. He's 35 years old. Doing just continuing to fight at a high level at a lower weight class as well. So he's impressed me at bantamweight. He had a rocky start to bantamweight, but he's came back and he's won a couple in a row, and those victories he looked really good. Merab Delishvili, he is a great prospect coming up in this UFC bantamweight division. His last win was against Marlon Moraes. That was a crazy fight. He got hurt really bad in that fight, but he fought back and he ended up knocking out Marlon Moraes. So, he dug deep in that fight. He shows that when he gets hurt, he can fight back. So I'm interested to see if Merab utilizes his wrestling, because he's got great wrestling. So that's gonna be a fun matchup. Moving on to the co-main event. It's a middleweight bout. Paulo Costa taking on Luke Rockhold. Paulo Costa on a 2-fight skid. He lost to Adesanya. He missed weight, and he lost to Marlon Vettori. So, a rocky couple of fights for Costa. Then we have Luke Rockhold coming back after about 3 years of not fighting. His last fight was at light heavyweight, and it was taking on the former light heavyweight champ, Jan Blachowicz, and he got knocked out bad. You see whenever Blachowicz fights, you see that highlight reel of him knocking out Rockhold. So, not a great last fight for him, but also that was 3 years ago. So, it's going to be interesting to see what Luke Rockhold, we see, because obviously he was champion. He can be champion, former Strikeforce champion, former UFC champion. So can he get back to that championship status? This is obviously his first step to get back into the rankings. So it will be very interesting to see this matchup. Moving on to the main event, we have the welterweight champion Kamaru Usman defending his championship against Leon Edwards. This is their second fight. They fought way back in 2015, if I remember correctly. Kamaru Usman got the unanimous decision victory in that fight. So it's going to be interesting to see how both of these guys have evolved their game. Obviously, when they first fought, it was Usman was the wrestler and Edwards was the striker. Now it seems like Usman has figured out, he's brought his striking up to the next level with Trevor Whitman in his corner. And Leon Edwards, obviously, he's become a very well-rounded mixed martial artist after that fight. So, I'm still going to be picking Usman probably to win this. It's just a really tough fight to. I don't really see Edwards. I just don't see anyone really beating Usman. It's nothing against Edwards. It's just Usman has been so dominant in his last couple fights. Yes, it was a very close last fight to Colby Covington, but again, Colby Covington is, he's the number one guy behind Usman. So it's not surprising that that Covington was, a guy to kind of push Usman. But I'm still going to take Usman. Will it be a knockout victory? I don't necessarily see that. I see Usman winning probably a unanimous decision. But again, Usman's striking has been on another level. Who thought he was going to finish Masvidal like that? No one's ever finished Jorge Masvidal like that. So it's possible that, he now has that ability to have those big knockout victories. And also on this card, we have Miranda Fear, the Maverick. She was gracious enough to let me interview her about a week or so ago. So if you want to check that interview out, it is on the KO Podcast YouTube page. Now, moving on to more PFL playoffs. This card is the final PFL playoff card. So so the playoffs will be set after this card. But before the qualifying and semifinal fights, I just want to shed some light on a prospect that PFL, is very excited about. They brought her on the broadcast during the last card. She's a flyweight. Her name is Dakota Dechiva. She's from England. She's only 24. She's 5-0. So, this is a prospect that they're bringing in. They're very excited about. So I just wanted to shed some light on her. Now we move on to the featherweight semifinals. We have Rajoy Kudi taking on Bubba Jenkins. Bubba Jenkins, he's been a mainstay in the PFL for a couple of years now. He's a great wrestler, so look for him to utilize his wrestling to try to get that victory. We move on to women's lightweight semifinals. We have Larissa Pashredo taking on Olena Koleski. And, Larissa Pashredo is a beast. She's a beast. I mean, she knocks out her opponents in the first round, all very one-sided and brutally. I think she's only lost to Kayla Harrison in PFL, so that's just a testament to how good she is. So, I mean, I'm just going to, Pashredo, she's a force to be reckoned with. So, look for her fight to end early. In the next matchup, we have a featherweight semifinal. We have Chris Wade taking on Brendan Lockmaid. This is going to be a great fight. Both of these guys are top-notch MMA athletes. Chris Wade, he's been in the UFC. He's fought some of the best. And Brendan Lockmaid, he's got that power in his hands. This is going to be a great matchup. There's some heat going into this. So, I mean, this is going to be a matchup to look out for on this card. And in the women's lightweight semifinal, of course, we have the multi-champ Kayla Harrison. She is taking on Martina Jandrova, who is a 6-2 professional from the Czech Republic. Obviously, Kayla Harrison, she's probably going to be the favorite to win this championship again. And it brings up the question, what is next for her to really do in PFL? I mean, she's like a 2 or 3 time champion. So, I mean, and no one, the only people who have came close, I'll put air parentheses around that, the people who came close to beating her were people that she won by unanimous decision against. That's just how good she is. And I mean, you can say what you want, the matchups, maybe some of them were a little questionable. She did go up against a 10-10 MMA fighter, but, that's kind of what the PFL also gives her. And she's not shying away from fighting people outside of the organization. She wants to fight Chris Cyborg. She really wants that Chris Cyborg fight. So, I would be down to see that. Why not? I mean, she's basically has beaten almost, she's beaten almost everybody in her division in the PFL. So, why not have her, spread her wings and, PFL and Bellator, I think they're both open to the idea. So that's going to be, hopefully they can get that fight made, but she's got to win this fight first. So let's see what she can do in this women's lightweight semifinal fight. Now let's review some Dana White's Contender Series for this Tuesday. Taking a look at this Contender Series card. The card and the rankings are brought to you by Tapology.com. In the first fight, we have Nazim Sakharov. He is the number 25 lightweight in the U.S. Northeast, and he's taking on Mohammed Sonal Hassanzadeh. I hope I said that name correctly. He is the number 3 lightweight in Asia South. Moving on to a women's bantamweight division, we have Haley Cowan, who is the number 29th ranked woman in the bantamweight division for the United States. And then her opponent is Claudia Lettel. She is number 25. She is the ranked number 25 woman in Brazil. Moving on to a bantamweight matchup, we have Jack Cartwright, who is the number 2 bantamweight in the UK/Ireland. He's taking on Jose Johnson, who is the number 4 bantamweight in the US West. Moving on to a middleweight fight, we have Claudio Ribeiro. He is the number 6 ranked middleweight in Brazil, and he is taking on Ivan Venezuela, who is the number 3 ranked middleweight in Mexico. In the feature bout, it is a lightweight bout. We have Thomas Paul. He is the number 6th lightweight in UK/Ireland, and he is taking on Esteban Ribovics, who is the number 1 ranked lightweight in Argentina. So let's see how many finishes or amazing fights we get on this card. And that is going to do it for this episode of the KO Podcast. If you want to keep up to date with the podcast, we have an Instagram, the KO_podcast. And we also have a Twitter. Just type in the KO Podcast with Tyler Russo. We have a YouTube channel, the KO Podcast. So we are on all those platforms. So check the podcast out. And thank you for taking the time out of your busy day to listen. I hope you all have a safe and blessed day. Bye-bye.